as local news gets. News 12, the Bronx.
Thanks for joining us on this Saturday evening. I'm Dave Roush. A rally for justice challenging the mayor to transform the NYPD. People at today's protest feel that recent encounters with the cops have violated their civil rights, claiming officers are using unnecessary force. News 12 The Bronx reporter John Diaz has more on that story. Well, a few days ago, we told you about a dark and dirty underpass on East 174th Street near Walton Avenue. Bronxites wanted it cleaned up so they wouldn't have to walk past the trash and, yes, even some decapitated birds. They say someone came by and took care of it for them, and they hope that those clean conditions last.
Well, since our segment with News 12 The Bronx, which I appreciate, yesterday, when I got off work yesterday evening from Bronx Lebanon Hospital, I noticed yesterday evening that somebody did come by. I don't know who, if it was DOT, sanitation, but the area was swept. We appreciate those improvements, but we still need so much more.
And of course, we'll keep an eye on that tunnel and keep you updated with any developments. Well, 12 is on crime now. Police are looking for a 30-year-old man and a 28-year-old woman who held up a bodega at 1154 Washington Avenue on Thursday. They can be seen entering the store in the video you see here. The man was allegedly armed with a box cutter. And another robbery also on Thursday in Unionport. Police say this 25-year-old Hispanic man walked into the Carvel on the corner of Castle Hill and Newbold Avenues, ordered an ice cream cone, paid for that ice cream cone, and then pulled out a gun. Police say he demanded cash from the worker, and then he took off running. If you have any information that can help police, you're asked to call Crime Stoppers. The number's on your screen. It's 1-800-577-TIPS, and you can remain anonymous. Well, Bronxites grab some fashion on wheels, and a subway station gets a cool addition. News 12 The Bronx reporter JT Fetch has all that and more in this week's Neighborhood Brief.
Hi there, hope you're having a great weekend. A bright purple truck selling trendy clothes for women is now rolling.
All right, thanks, JT. I'm Dave Roush, and this is News 12 The Bronx. More hyperlocal headlines are ahead. Plus, we'll tell you what some people are doing to try and keep a local movie theater stay put in their neighborhood.
I watch News 12 because they keep me informed about my area.
As local news gets.
Welcome back. There's new hope in the fight to save one of just a few movie theaters left here in our borough. The historic American Theater in Parkchester is set to become a clothing store. But News 12 The Bronx reporter Allie Wolf explains why some community groups believe they can reverse that deal.
The sign is up and construction is well underway.
And if you're looking to get outside, the Department of Transportation is joining forces with a number of local groups for weekend walks. The idea is to make local streets open just for pedestrians, all while having a number of activities to keep people busy. Today's walk was on Burnside Avenue, hosted by the Davison Community Center. Walks have already taken place in Brooklyn and on Louis 9 Boulevard here in the Bronx.
Not just Davison Community Center, but it's also closing all the businesses coming together to join forces together to address the health needs of the community.
We've had a good turnout. We've gotten over 30,000 people throughout the 3 weekends. It's 3 consecutive Saturdays here at Burnside Avenue, Davidson.
And the summer walk will be coming back to Burnside Avenue next weekend on August the 2nd. And now to the latest in the Malaysian Airlines crash in the Ukraine. Planes carrying more remains of Flight 17 victims arrived today in the Netherlands. All 298 passengers and crew died when the plane was shot down over eastern Ukraine last week. Most of those victims were Dutch. The first bodies arrived in the Netherlands on Wednesday. Now, the Malaysian Prime Minister is expected to meet with his Dutch counterpart on Wednesday to discuss that crash. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, residents are fleeing the city of Donetsk to avoid heavy artillery fire. Trains are no longer running in or out of the city, which is a stronghold for pro-Russia rebels. The United Nations says over 141,000 Ukrainians have fled to Russia to escape the fighting in the eastern part of their country. And in more world news, government officials say Israel has agreed to extend its 12-hour ceasefire with Gaza by 4 hours, allowing Palestinian civilians the chance to get aid and evacuate to safer areas. Israeli military officials say they will honor that ceasefire, but it will come to an end early if Palestinian militants choose to violate it. Gaza officials say more than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed in that offensive, and militants have launched close to 2,500 rockets at Israel. Meanwhile, the Israeli military has uncovered 31 tunnels used to transport weapons underground and destroyed half of those tunnels. Time now for a check of your weather on the 2s. And of course, it's the 7-day forecast with the weekend always in view. Clearly, Saturday the better day than Sunday, with a chance of showers moving into the area. Could affect that Dominican parade. We're going to keep an eye on things. High of 85 for your Sunday and Monday. Same conditions when you head back to work. But the middle of your work week looks much better with those clouds and rain clearing out. Highs in the low 80s. Very comfortable, seasonable for this time of year. And we see a few more clouds roll in for Friday and Saturday next weekend. Highs still each day in the low 80s. Well, I'm Dave Roush. More of your Bronx hyper-local headlines are just 2 minutes away. Plus, we've got all that you need to know about tomorrow's Dominican Day Parade.
News 12, the Bronx, in high definition.
Well, there's no place like home, and one group of Bronx buddies are making sure they all come back, not only to the borough where they grew up, but to the very same block. The annual Old Timers Stickball Reunion continues into its 14th year. News 12, the Bronx reporter Jessica Cunnington shows us the action.
Yeah! One day a year, the boys come back to the block.
We owned it then.
And the group has raised several $1,000s over the years that they gave back to St. John Chrysostom. The church turns 100 years old this year. And Bronxites are getting ready for this year's annual Dominican Day Parade set for this weekend. The festivities are taking place on Sunday at 1:30 in the afternoon. Now it kicks off at the Grand Concourse at Tremont Avenue and heads south on the concourse to 167th Street. News 12 will, of course, be covering the parade throughout the day. And turning now to world news, the State Department has shuttered the U.S. Embassy in Libya and evacuated personnel there due to rising violence in the capital city of Tripoli. Officials say all embassy operations will be suspended until security in the area improves. The suspension marks the second time in about 3 years that Washington has closed its embassy in Libya.
We are deeply committed and remain committed to the diplomatic process in Libya. Our envoy will continue to be engaged with the British envoy and other envoys, and we will continue to try to build out of the election the legitimacy of the government formation and the efforts to end the violence.
And those embassy workers were taken across the border into Tunisia under heavy U.S. military security. And back to the U.S. now. The debate over whether there is a humane way for the government to kill criminals has been renewed after a third lethal injection in 6 months went wrong in Arizona. States which use the death penalty have had a hard time finding an effective combination of drugs after the drug makers stopped providing them to states for use as a lethal punishment. The Arizona case follows a similar botched execution in Ohio in January. And President Obama says the country's businesses have helped in adding 10 million new jobs over the past 4 years. But he's blaming corporations that leave the U.S. to avoid taxes as holding back our economy. He says changes in the tax code need to be made now.
The best way to level the playing field is through tax reform that lowers the corporate rate, closes wasteful loopholes, and simplifies the tax code for everybody. But stopping companies from renouncing their citizenship just to get out of paying their fair share of taxes is something that cannot wait.
And the president also says this can help the middle class grow and ensure a better future for the younger generation. Well, I'm Dave Roush. More of your Bronx hyper-local headlines are just 2 minutes away. Plus, the Yankees look to continue their strong play this afternoon at the stadium. Those highlights and more are coming up in sports.
I wish she was still here because every time.
Well, it looks like it could rain on the Dominican Day Parade, but it seems like nothing can rain on the Yankees Parade. Dan Serafin.
Only one loss since the All-Star break, Dave, heading into Saturday's game. The Yankees playing well for sure. We'll go to a little history first, though. August 20. Now, they struggled a little bit last year, Dave, but the Giants with those 2 Super Bowls just recently, the Giants way that Matthias Kiwanuka was talking about, I kind of believe him.
It's hard to believe that we're talking football already and it's July.
It's pretty hot, but hey, football's football.
Football rules always.
That's true.
I'm Dave Roush. More of your hyper-local Bronx headlines are just 2 minutes away. But first, we want to know if you're excited for football season now that training camps have started in New York. You can cast your vote on news12.com or by going to channel 612.
As local news gets. News 12, Brooklyn.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Dave Roush. A rally for justice is challenging the mayor to transform the police department. People at today's protest feel that recent encounters with the NYPD have violated their civil rights, saying that officers have been using unnecessary force. News 12 Brooklyn's John Diaz has more.
I cannot live in a city that a man can choke me on tape.
A fired-up Reverend Al Sharpton leads a rally of New Yorkers fighting for change, saying they're not against the police.
After police arrest a woman earlier this week for murdering a Brooklyn mother, a cab driver says he may have unknowingly carried the mother's dismembered body in his car. Leah Cuevas is accused of murdering and dismembering Chanel Latoya Brown, a Brownsville mother of 4. Cuevas is also accused of scattering Brown's body parts throughout different parts of Long Island. Shortly after the deadly incident, Cuevas was seen leaving the apartment building in a livery cab. Fernando Mateo, the spokesman for the New York State Federation of Taxi Drivers, says the driver of that cab recognized Cuevas on television and knew that he had to talk to police.
He had transported this lady on a regular basis for over 1.5 years, taking her to and from work. When he saw that she was arrested, he also remembered that he picked her up. She called him personally and said, I need to be taken to Brentwood, Long Island, and I have 2 suitcases that I need to transport.
Brown lived in Cuevas' building in Brownsville. Cuevas was not the landlord, but neighbors tell us she did help manage the building. Prosecutors say Brown and Cuevas argued over rent and utility bills before the 27-year-old went missing on July 5th. And the NYPD needs your help to find a man wanted for public lewdness. Police say a man exposed himself to a woman on the B44 bus at Nostrand Avenue and Avenue X on July 8th. He is described as Hispanic and was wearing blue jeans, a black t-shirt, and a black hat. If you've seen him, give Crime Stoppers a call. The number's on your screen. It's 1-800-577-TIPS. Well, an elderly woman is hit and killed by a car in Bath Beach yesterday. Police say it happened around 12:20 in the afternoon at the corner of Rutherford Place and Bay 16th Street. They tell us a 37-year-old woman hit an 80-year-old woman who was crossing the street. The victim's been identified as Margarita Nanfro. The driver did stay at the scene. I'm Dave Roush, and you're watching News 12 Brooklyn. Tenants in Prospect Lefferts Gardens, forced from their homes after a fire, are still fighting to get back in 2 years later. News 12's Amanda Placencia has that story coming up. And we did reach out to the landlord and the building company for their side of the story, and we're still waiting for a response from them. Well, the debate over whether there is a humane way for the government to kill criminals has been renewed after a 3rd lethal injection in 6 months went wrong in Arizona. States that use the death penalty have a hard time finding an effective combination of drugs after drug makers stopped providing them to states for use as a lethal punishment. The Arizona case follows a similar botched execution in Ohio in January. And in international news, Russia is lashing out at the newest round of Ukraine-related sanctions handed down by the European Union. The EU says Russia is endangering the fight against international terrorism. The sanctions were announced yesterday and include travel bans and asset freezes on 15 people, including some of that country's top security officials. A foreign ministry statement says the EU is taking, quote, a complete turn away from joint work with Russia on international and regional security, end quote. And we're starting to get an idea of when we may learn more about the Malaysia Airlines crash in Ukraine. The Dutch safety board leading the international investigation says it expects to share its initial findings as early as the end of next week. Malaysia's Prime Minister will head to the Netherlands to meet with his Dutch counterpart and talk about the downed jetliner. Flight 17 was shot down last week in a part of Ukraine controlled by Russian-backed rebels. All of the 298 people on board were killed. Meanwhile, French investigators are set to arrive today at the site of Thursday's Air Algerie crash in Mali. The plane's black box is now in the hands of French troops. Officials aren't ruling out any possible cause as of yet. They do say, however, bad weather is likely to blame. All 116 people on board the plane died in that crash. Half of them were French. Well, a new Starbucks opens in Williamsburg, and hundreds gather to raise money for autism research. News 12 Brooklyn's JT Fetch has those stories and more in your neighborhood brief.
Hi there, hope you're having a great weekend. Residents in Williamsburg have a new neighbor. Starbucks opens its very first location there. It's on the corner of Ainsley Street and
Okay, here's something most of us can relate to. Have you ever used a claw machine to get someone a cuddly stuffed animal? Well, now you can play the same game, but instead of a toy, you can win a beer. Take a look at this. The couple who created the game is getting help from a New Jersey company to build it. You can just put $1 or $2 in and try to pick up one of 38 bottles. I need to play that game. And Comic-Con is in full force in San Diego. The convention celebrates not just comic books, but all things pop culture. Many people dress up as their favorite characters from TV, movies, cartoons, etc. Comics, video games, the whole bit. Comic-Con runs through tomorrow. New York's Comic-Con starts October the 9th. And Dan Serafin is here with a night of boxing coming up in our borough.
2 weeks away, Dave, from a big card at Barclays Center featuring some borough boxers. That's who we're talking about now. Nothing comes easy in the boxing ring. Two borough fighters already know that. Danny Jacobs, Kiwanuka, now one of the veterans on that Giants defense. Of course, Big Blue known for their defense. I guess that's part of the whole Giants way.
Hard to believe we're talking about football already. It's July, but football rules always. Thanks,
Yes.
Dan, so much. Appreciate it. I'm Dave Roush, and you're watching News 12 Brooklyn. Take a look at our question of the day. Are you excited for football season? Now that training camp is underway, let us know at news12.com. The tunnel and keep you updated with any developments. I'm Dave Roush, and this is News 12 The Bronx. More hyper-local headlines are ahead. Plus, we'll tell you what some people are doing to try and keep a local movie theater in their neighborhood.
Looking real good and weather ahead. Stay with us.
I'm Dan Serafin.
Well, here's something everyone can relate to. Have you ever used one of those claw machines to win someone a cuddly stuffed animal? Well, now you can play the same game, but instead of a toy, you can actually win a bottle of beer. Take a look at this. The couple who created the game is getting help from a New Jersey company to build it. You can just put $1 or $2 in the machine and try to pick up one of 38 bottles. My younger brother would be an expert at that. He's great at those claw games. And over in California now, Comic-Con is in full force in San Diego. The convention celebrates not just comic books, but all things pop culture. Many people dress up as their favorite characters from TV, movies, cartoons, comics, and even video games. Comic-Con runs through tomorrow. New York's Comic-Con starts here October the 9th.
I'm Dan Serafin.
As local news gets, News 12, The Bronx.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is News 12 The Bronx. I'm Dave Roush. Well, the Bronx Chamber of Commerce is giving back to our borough by holding its first ever Family Day at the Split Rock Golf Course. News 12 The Bronx reporter. In Riverdale, people from all belief backgrounds are joining together for a special prayer vigil. The group is praying for peace in the region. They say Israel has a right to defend herself against Hamas terrorists. We'll have more from this vigil later on tonight. And protests both in the U.S. and around the world continue to call for an end to Israel's military actions in Gaza. In an interview on CNN today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the public doesn't know the entire story and that Hamas is ultimately responsible for the rising death toll.
The world is responding to something that is heart-wrenching, and that is any civilian casualty. We don't want to see a single civilian casualty. We're not targeting a single civilian, but we're faced with a very ruthless terrorist enemy.
Hamas called for a 24-hour truce today after previously rejecting one. Netanyahu dismissed the new call for a ceasefire, saying Hamas is continuing their operations and, quote, Israel will do what it can to protect its citizens, end quote. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department releases satellite images they say shows Russian forces have fired rockets across the border into eastern Ukraine and that Russia-backed separatists have used heavy artillery provided by Russia in attacks on Ukrainian forces from inside of that country. Now, this is an image from a supposed strike dated Saturday the 26th. The highlighted squares point out blast marks from where rockets were launched and craters from where they supposedly landed. Other images show strikes between July 20th and 23rd. A White House official says Russia is to blame when it comes to providing these weapons.
Well, this confirms what we've been saying publicly for several days.
Thank you very much, Norm. Kurt Semter here with sports and a big day for Joe Torre, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and a long time coming for sure, and much deserved. What really can you say about Joe Torre, the legendary Yankee manager, reached the play. And they had a lot of fun out there. It was a great day to be outside. Looked like they had a good time. I couldn't do it, that's for sure.
It looks like a ton of fun. The NYPD does that too, I think.
Yes, they do, absolutely.
It's
a great sport and a lot of fun for them.
Yeah, it looks like fun. Thanks so much, Kurt. I'm Dave Roush, and this is News 12 The Bronx. We are as local news gets. More of your hyper-local headlines are just 2 minutes away. But first, another look at our question of the day. We want to know, should subsidies or tax breaks be offered to those who take public transportation? You can weigh in at news12.com or channel 612. We're coming right back.
And we have more weather ahead in the news, so stay with us.
Setting sail in a cardboard boat might sound like a bad idea, but it could get you bragging rights in Arkansas. The 28th Annual World Championship Cardboard Boat Races were held on Saturday. The theme was wild and wacky and downright crazy. The participants delivered, taking to the water in carefully constructed boats, everything from sharks to floating cabins and monster trucks. Awards were given out for the most creative team and boat, and the boat that floated the best and also the most dramatic sinking. And the Colorado Rockies held a special promotion Saturday night to honor their star shortstop Troy Tulowitzki by giving away free t-shirts with his name and jersey number. Just one little problem. They spelled his name wrong. The Rockies apologized to Tulowitzki for the blunder and offered fans a correctly spelled jersey and even a free ticket to a future game. And Kurt Semter's here. Kurt, one name I guarantee that didn't get spelled wrong this weekend, Joe Torre in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely not. That's an embarrassing mistake by the Rockies. How does that happen to them? Oh,
someone's going to be out of a job.
Yes, exactly. Well, Joe Torre did some job with the Yankees. What else can you say about him? The legendary Yankee manager with 6 assists. Well, we know LeBron James decided to leave Miami and go back to Cleveland. One question remained: what number would he wear? King James made the decision earlier today in line with the return to the Cavs. He's going to return to number 23, the jersey he wore during his first run in Cleveland. James had worn number 6 with the Heat. Looking to pick up the new LeBron jersey, Adidas says they will begin shipping to stores later this week. And I can tell you this, the first people out there to get it will be those guys in Cleveland who burned those jerseys way back when. They're going to have to go get the new ones.
I was just going to say that those who didn't burn the jerseys.
Exactly, they're fine.
Big sigh of relief for those folks there. All right. Thanks so much, Kurt. I'm Dave Roush, and you are watching News 12 Brooklyn. Take a look before we go at our question of the day. It has to do with transit. We want to know if you think people who ride public transit should get tax breaks. Weigh in. Let us know how you think. News12.com or channel 612 on Optimum TV. We're coming right back.